We did a lot of physical work on the farm. I love to physically be active and probably abused my body throughout the years, but um, and just to walk barefoot in the pig barns and let that pig shit just come up between your toes. And I loved that. I loved getting dirty, but then I loved getting dressed up and being very much a girl, too. And that was kind of like my grandma, she cleaned up really well. I decided a long time ago that I'm not going to volunteer at church in my spare time. I'm not going to do that. My parents need me. They both had their illnesses, dad before mom and then mom. And so I went home very, very regularly and was their nurse. Dad died in his home, and he'd say to other siblings, she's so good to me, like he was talking about me, but I would never get that verbal confirmation, except one day I was staying overnight. It was my, turn during hospice. He was in hospice at home for 6 months. And I had to go to work in the morning, and I'd been there for several days. And there's one thing that each one of them said that I will never forget. And I was leaving for work. Dad was in his hospice bed, and I was leaving for work, 6 a.m. And he said to me, I'm going to miss you. And that was the most he had said verbally probably ever in my life, to show me that, he appreciated me.
I often talk about my paternal grandmother when I talk about my theater work, especially the work that I do here in Minneapolis. In that, so my father was born in 1946 to a single mom, and she had run away from boarding school. She went to school in Wahpeton, North Dakota, and she ran away and came to Minneapolis, where she gave birth to my dad. But because she was unwed and a runaway, he was confiscated from her at birth, and he grew up in foster care. And by the time he aged out when he was 18, she had already passed away. Yeah, I think of her so much in this work that I do, just because I think of the difference a generation makes, and that the life that she lived here is so incredibly different than the life that I do, and that she was practically invisible in this city, and this city didn't do anything to protect her or take care of her, and actually quite the opposite. It did a lot of harm to her, and she died quite anonymously here, without having any agency over her own story or her own voice. And I think in a lot of ways, storytelling and writing and acting have been my way to offer to my community specifically, going all the way back to my grandma, to the idea that if I can get on a stage and I can tell a story, or I can write a story down, that's my way that I'm giving her voice.
I have a passion for helping others, and helping others as in making sure that they have their basic necessities in terms of, I think it comes from the fact that I have I'm a refugee. My parents are refugees, and we always had to now try to navigate whatever is in front of us. From a really young age, I always had to go with my mom to go translate at the age of 7, and so this passion and want to help people be able to help themselves, not do things for people, but then also give the building blocks and resources so that they can continue to help other people. And again, the only thing that I ask for them is that for them to pass their knowledge and their, what they know to other people as well. So from the community perspective, I think success to me would be like, if I'm able to help build both structurally and also system wise something in the Southwest here that would support and empower the Hmong community down here for years to come, for my grandchildren to be able to use and continue to carry on. That would be something that I would call success. People might not want to know about Coolor that's in Southwest Minnesota, but hey, they might know about her now.
In the world that we're in right now, the way that you get noticed is by being very radical, by taking extreme kinds of positions. My position is about love and compassion and fidelity to other humans. And that's just, not all that sexy. Although, I have a radio show. I write every month for Lavender Magazine. In a column that's written from my heart, a radio show that a lot of it is from my heart, and then I have a newsletter that I curate every month that goes out to 9,000 people. The newsletter is about how we are good to each other. I share stories about how humans show up for other humans and do these incredibly remarkable things, like a group of 4 Black men in their late teens or early 20s sitting at a restaurant, inviting the 70-something a white collar woman who's eating by herself to commemorate the anniversary that she had with her husband, who is now deceased, and the men inviting her over they're total strangers, but inviting her over to have dinner with them. It happens a gazillion times a day, but no one ever talks about that because that's not what is sexy.
And when they invited me, when they did the signing on September 9th, 2019 at 9 a.m. in the morning, he handed me the first one he signed on ink and the pen. They gave it to me, and then they gave it to the other beautiful people that's there. But I have the bill and the pen and that. I made promise. It was to all the women of the world that we matter, not in a man's eyes, not in the government's eyes, not in a culture, not in a religion, but we matter. We shouldn't be scarred. We shouldn't be maimed. We're people and we matter. And I thanked my sister that day for giving me a key to say that my voice, I surrendered my journey, my voice for the women of the world. I see and feel their pain, but I also know there's a beautiful smile in there. And we can push that empowerment button on no matter what color they are, that they're worth it. And that was something that I seen. Wasn't an accomplishment for myself, but it gave me the vision that I was praying for, that humanity is starting to grow again.
I am completely wedded to mystery. I love mystery. I love mystery more than I love answers. I love that we don't know. I think that the thing that unites us so wonderfully as human beings is that we all are in unknowing together. And when we can recognize that, life gets so much easier. Life is a steep climb. I mean, I feel like I'm with the Buddhists in terms of this is not easy. And the whole happiness thing and the, thing that we do in this culture is just not helpful in so many ways. One of the great blessings and honors of being in pastoral ministry was having the privilege of saying something about people who had died. And that meant listening to people's stories and that kind of thing, and finding some metaphors and giving back to the community. It was so much more, for me, way more fun than writing a sermon, because you didn't have to wonder about what to write. It was there. The life was there, and it was like the topic was just standing right in front of you. It was still a huge challenge, but you'd have to go look for something like, well, I wonder if people will find this interesting. No, this is an interesting person. And right. And that's that. And if, in another life, I want to be Terry Gross.
I think one of the areas that has really helped us kind of get close to our neighbors is my husband and I have worked for an organization called In the Arena. And so that organization brought elite athletes together with at-risk youth. And we specifically worked within our community here in North Minneapolis, and we became volunteers for the Jerry Gamble Boys and Girls Club. And so that's just up off of Broadway in Irving. And so we worked there, volunteered there for 5 years. And in that time, we really got to know a lot of members in the community. And there's something I think about my husband and I, maybe it's the training on the roller skis that we're doing, or the running with poles, or, we're always kind of jumping around in our in our yard because we have like box jumps or doing some kind of strength exercises or going for runs. But we really do seem to sort of engage the youth in our area so that they are sort of curious by what we're doing. It's sort of an icebreaker, if you will. They used to not be able to bike any faster than I could run. And so I could go for a run and they could bike alongside me, and that was perfect. And so, it was just long enough that they could get tired biking, or, they would keep up the hills. I'd have to kind of sometimes push them up the hills because that's a little tougher. And now they're way faster than me. And so one of the great things is, though, we've been able to kind of show them how they can get to the ski trails. We have a little side trail that we make through the woods, and they can ski from here. How they get to the bike trails, we show them, how to get there safely so they don't have to cross big roads, or they can, they can stay, kind of in areas that are lit and feel safe and comfortable doing it. And so then the last step was really connecting them to more programming where they could meet other kids and really learn about the sports even more. And so we connected them to the Lopet Foundation's Trail Kids. And so that really got them engaged, where they were suddenly learning more skills. They were connecting with other kids, and they really kind of had a purpose and a reason to head over to Theodore Wirth. And so at this point, the greatest thing for us is that they feel like that's their park.
Right now, besides working as a nurse practitioner, I'm also a faculty member at the University of Minnesota at part-time, which next summer I'll transition to full-time with university. But that is a whole nother level of, it's a different part of the brain that you're using and teaching and helping to train other nurse practitioners. This is your education. And if you're finding that you feel there's lack of opportunity, or opportunity is not being given to you that you see is available, then go get it. Like, you're in this situation, step up and say, hey, I can do that. I'm willing to do that. Oh, I'm really good at this, or I'm working on this thing and I think I can do it there. I want to say it. And what's the worst can happen is they say no. Otherwise, you can stay quiet and have all these feelings and then feel miserable about life and also lose the opportunities.
So why do I care? Why do I care about equality or equal rights? Why did I come to that as my issue? Because there's so many issues. Um, I think I got it from my mom. I think the ERA means to me equality, it's equity. My mother was very compassionate. I think she was a true Christian. I don't know too many true Christians that actually live teachings of Jesus, but she was always compassionate and fair. And she was always willing to lend a hand, even when she didn't have much. She always planted a huge garden. We always had plenty of food, but we didn't always have things that money could buy. And sometimes she had to use food stamps. And I remember being a kid, being at the grocery store, and how some of the grocery owners would treat her. Now, some treat her well, others would make a big deal about making sure everybody knew my mom had food stamps, those little colored tickets you tore out of a book. And I knew, just even as a child, that he was demeaning. And I felt sorry for my mother, but I also realized that she didn't do that back. She didn't treat other people that way or put them in their place or make sure they knew what their limitations were. So I think I saw that and I understood you can have a big heart. You can be compassionate and fair. And that's what I want to see in the world. I just want a fair shot, equity of opportunity. And that's, I think, what inspires me to do what I do. And I think that's more my motto is do what I can with what I have in the short. And that's what I hope to do with my one wild and precious life.
My grandmother was a very strong woman, very wise. And I remember something she taught me when I was really young. She said, when you have the chance to say something, don't let that opportunity pass you. And it came because I was in a meeting. My family raised me to be at the table when they were making the decision, no matter what it is. If we were building an extra room because an uncle was getting married, if we were building a wall or whatever, I was always at the table. They were very, I came from a family that was always put education first because we believe in education is the one thing that can put somebody's life ahead, but also to be a good human. So I was at a meeting and I said, somebody said, what do you think? And I said, oh, I'm a girl, I can't say anything. So my grandmother was there. And that was the first time I realized I was no different than my uncles that were at the table. Because everybody said, what? So then I had a lecturing after lecturing after lecturing from my dad, from my grandmother, from my uncles, from everyone, because they were so concerned that I will fall into the category of I'm a woman and I can't say anything while the men are around. So they are probably enforced in that area, which is why I think the biggest reason, it is the biggest reason why I feel I need to speak up, regardless of who is at the table. I always say what's on my mind, and sometimes it can get you in trouble, but it's a good trouble.
When a student doesn't behave or perform the way that it's expected, then, that's an issue. And so I feel that we need to change our perspectives. And yes, if it's something that disrupts, the learning or whatnot, or their own learning, then we need to address it. But I think we need to focus on the kids' talents and what, their background brings to our school community or to our classroom community. And, at the end, they're kids. They just want to have fun. School is a social, fun place for them. And of course, we need to have high expectations and, teach them to read and write and be problem solvers. But they need to have fun too. Like, that's what kids do. I've noticed that in our school carnivals or in our fundraisers that oftentimes the majority of the time it's just our white kids that participate. And I just thought that's not right, because our kids of color know. They know that their friends get to stay after school because there was this, auction and their family won the auction, or, I just started calling families I had connections with, either because they were in my daughter's class, in kindergarten or in preschool or whatnot, and just checking in and, oh, did you know this is happening? Do you want me to sign your kid up so you don't have to do it? And a lot of times they didn't even know. And I don't know what the missing link is.
Judaism is another way to express how one believes in God, or with, even if those that don't believe in God, one that believes in a being larger than the self. And but mostly I say God. And when I thank God, I really thank God. And I don't think that God is Jewish or Catholic or Hindu or Muslim or Sikh, or I don't know, whatever the different religions are, Episcopal, what have you. They're all part of humanity. And I feel very fortunate that I am Jewish. There's something, curse, it's a part of me since I was a little girl. And what you have as a growing up, if it's a good experience. I know there's some people who grow up in Judaism, Catholicism, whatever the religion might happen to be, and don't have good experiences, because I think that's what life is. Life is your perspective. And nowadays, as they said in the trial of Chauvin's trial, the jury, and in a sense, all thinks of life in terms of what their experience is and how they relate to it. And I think it was really so good that all of the jury was together on their decision, realizing that humanity, the way you treat one another, is more important in reaching decisions than anything. And when you see something is wrong, you speak up. And I think this is true. And I too have to learn to speak up more. I am better at speaking out to bring people in. But when it comes to calling somebody on something that they've said, or I think they've said, I should get to be better at that. Because unless we talk to one another about the way we view each other, things aren't going to change. And that's kind of where I'd like to end it.